Hi guys, I'm Andrew from Cruisemaster and I'm coming to you today from the Cruisemaster Tone Performance Centre. Just behind me here is a brand new, fresh off the boat Land Cruiser 300 VX. And we're going to be doing a series of videos with it, looking at all the things from towing, how does it go off-road, and how does it go on the beach. However, before we get started into that, we're always interested to see how the weight of these new vehicles stack up. So join us today to find out. So we know from all of Toyota's marketing information, they spend a lot of time on the 300 trying to make sure it is substantially lighter than the outgoing 200. We know that they have made many of the panels on it aluminium, and I believe the bonnet and the guards and the doors are all made of aluminium to reduce weight. They've also done some clever stuff in the back end of the chassis using different strength steels and different thicknesses of steels cleverly welded together to further reduce weight. According to the Toyota specification sheet, a VX Land Cruiser 300 in stock form should weigh about 2,630 kilos. That's about 110 kilos lighter than an outgoing Land Cruiser 200. Another reason that we like to weigh these vehicles when they're new is to make sure that the curb weights specified by the manufacturers are actually accurate. We found in the past on our Land Rover Defender that the numbers were way off, which had a big impact on the payload that the vehicle can carry. So, we're going to get the scales, stick them under the vehicle, and let's find out what it actually weighs. The Land Cruiser 300 has a front axle capacity of 1,630 kilos. We measured this at 1,390 without me in it, and 1,430 kilos with me in it. So there's 200 kilos of payload with a driver in it. If we then assume that that 40 kilo difference with me in it is going to be the same for a passenger, then we've got 160 kilos to play with left over in our front axle payload. This means we can put a bull bar and a winch on it with confidence that we're not going to go over the front axle capacity. One of the things I think has made a big difference on this vehicle is having that second battery removed from under the bonnet. This only has one starting battery, and that saves 30 kilos straight up. So whilst we're only down to one battery, got a good gain, and our front axle capacity has got plenty to play with. So now we've weighed the rear axle, and that comes out at 1,196 kilos. And given that the rear axle capacity is 1,930 kilos, that's quite a lot to play with. You do have to remember that we have about 80 kilos of the front driver and passenger weight do go onto the rear axle, so that leaves us with about 654 kilos of payload left in the rear axle. Now, if this is anything like a 200, we know that a 350 kilo ball weight at the back of the vehicle relates to about 500 kilos on that rear axle. So there's still 150 kilos left over of available payload approximately after you put the Caravan on the back. However, we are going to determine exactly what that load transfer effect is when we put the Caravan on in a minute. So that results in a curb weight of this vehicle of 2,586 kilos. That is 44 kilos less than Toyota's specified curb weight. So good work, Toyota, for getting the numbers right and being accurate with your curb weights. So we're just hitching up the Caravan to the Cruiser, and we found there's this little tag thing on the end of the retaining bolt for the tow ball mount. It just happens to be the perfect size for the little carabiner on the breakaway wire. I have no idea whether that's what it was meant for, but tell us what you think in the comments below. The other thing on all these new vehicles which really annoys me, particularly on an off-road vehicle such as the Land Cruiser, is why they persist on putting the plug for the trailer brakes and the trailer wiring so low and at the back there where you're going to hit it. It'd be so much better if they could position it further up on the vehicle. So enough about that, let's hop in and let's see what the weight of the Caravan has done to the rear axle of the Land Cruiser. One of the most important things to keep an eye on when you attach your trailer or caravan to the back of your tow vehicle is the change in the rear axle capacity. So that caravan behind us, it weighs 3.5 tons. It's got a 330 kilo ball weight. And that's had an effect on the rear axle of just over 500 kilos. So what ultimately happens is when you put the weight on the back, it lifts weight off the front axle and transfers it onto the back. So you're going to be very cautious of that. Regardless of that though, we are still under the 1930 kilo rear axle capacity. We're currently at 1,716. Now if we remove the weight of a driver and a passenger in there, we're left with about 134 kilos of payload in the back. So there is still a bit left over, but you do have to be cautious that if you are planning on putting some heavy rear mounted accessories, such as draw systems, long range tanks, or rear wheel carriers, you'll get very close to that rear axle capacity very quickly. Ultimately though, the aftermarket will be all busily working now on GVM increases, which will allow you to probably increase that rear axle capacity a bit to allow for those rear mounted accessories. So speaking of GVM, we saw earlier that the curb weight of this car is 2,586 kilos, which gives us just under 700 kilos of payload in the Land Cruiser 300. And that's quite a bit up on the 200 of about 90 kilos. So whilst that's a good increase, it's still not night to day. So it does mean you're going to be very cautious if you're going to go to town, have your family in your car, your draw systems, wheel carrier, bull bar, winch, underbody guards, all that type of stuff. It's still going to suffer from the same issues as the 200, and you are going to need to GVM increase this vehicle. However, the benefit of putting a GVM increase in it is you can use the extra bit of buffer that Toyota leave in on the GCM when you consider that the ball weight of the Caravan is carried by the GVM of the vehicle. If you add those two numbers together, you're always shy of Toyota's factory GCM, so you can use that extra bit of capacity there by doing the GVM increase. So that is all of the weights on the new Land Cruiser 300. Next up, we're going to be taking the Caravan and the Cruiser out for a drive. I'm really interested to see how the 300 tows that 3.5 ton Caravan, given the new 6-cylinder diesel and the new 10-speed transmission. I suspect Toyota know what they're doing, so it's going to be a pretty interesting drive when compared to the 200 that I've got heaps of experience with. So if you're interested to see how that all goes, keep an eye out on YouTube and Facebook and make sure you don't miss out.